The words about a pandemic. Turn to you.
What do you say to Americans who are concerned that you're not taking this seriously enough?
And say, for example, he's going to continue with political rallies. Is this sending the right message?
Would you rate your response to this crisis?
Part 1. The Bill for Mogga is Due by John Pavlovitz, March 12, 2020. The bill for MAGA has come due, Trump supporters. It's time to pay up. The deferred invoice for you selling your souls is here. It's time to pay for every incendiary campaign boast you cheered, every factless diatribe you vigorously applauded, every nonsensical middle-of-the-night tweet you boosted, every dehumanizing stereotype and slur you shared, every callous and cruel rally insult you passionately amend. It's time to pay for every denial of scientific evidence, every terminated qualified conscientious objector, every attack on factual responsible journalism, every vicious assault on objective reality, every star-spangled dog and pony show distraction, every lazy xenophobic caricature, every tired racist tirade. This is how your beloved capitalism works, isn't it? Someone was always going to pay for services rendered. Nothing is free. Isn't that what you've been saying? No handouts? Well, dig deep, friend, because you are on the hook for this. Many people have been footing the bill for a long time. Migrants and Muslims and transgender people, young black men, refugees, the sick and the poor. Already vulnerable communities pushed all the way to the brink, and now past it. You were paying too, of course. You were just too willfully ignorant or intellectually negligent to realize it. Over and over, we tried to tell you about the cost. The civil rights you were sacrificing too. The environmental protections you were losing as well as we were. The safety and security you were relinquishing alongside us. We tried to tell you that this hardship was not a partisan expense, that his moral bankruptcy would eventually hit you hard too. But your Fox News bubble, and your white evangelical echo chamber, and your America First Don't Tread on Me middle finger affinity clubs left you certain you were insulated from it all, that the only tears that would fall would be liberal ones, that the only people suffering voted for Hillary, that all of the pain would be isolated to people who vote blue. You felt immune from the spreading sickness. You felt invincible, because your Messiah told you that you were winning, and that was enough for you. He was lying to you, as he always does, but you preferred to believe the lie because it felt warm running through your veins, even as it was poisoning you. The intoxicating, cheap high of making America great while owning the libs. That was a costly drug, that arrogance, and you were slowly going broke in your addiction. Now, in the middle of a burgeoning pandemic and a precipitous market crash and a hopelessly fractured nation, the bill is coming due. You can't avoid paying anymore. You're here with us. I think even you realize that now. This president didn't create this virus, but he ignored it, denied it, minimized it, joked about it, weaponized it, politicized it, exacerbated it. He systematically removed qualified people and replaced them with genuflecting, sycophantic traitors, or with no one at all. He generated a steady stream of partisan attacks and conspiracy theories, and abject lies, created in the moment, and the kind of "I am smarter than anyone in the room" sermonizing that cult leaders bellow, all the way to the terrible and tragic end. He is culpable for the chaos and the unnecessary illness, and yes, the preventable deaths because of it, and you are too. This is the human cost of the MAGA cult's delusion, and we're all paying for it now equally, however we voted. Pandemics don't choose sides, or spare voting blocks, or respect affiliations. He will pay for it in November, and in the unflattering, incorruptible light of history. I hope whatever you received was worth it. I hope you still feel like you're winning. Part 2. Trump Doesn't Care About You, by Matt Ford, published in the New Republic, March 23, 2020. President Trump claimed last week that the coronavirus crisis had turned him into a wartime president. Over the weekend, he signaled that he might aid the enemy. "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself," he shouted on Twitter on Sunday night. "At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go." The problem to which Trump refers is a pandemic that threatens to kill between 200,000 and 1.7 million Americans over the next year, according to CDC estimates. The cure is a massive temporary reduction in American social and economic life that will throw the nation into a recession and upend countless lives and fortunes. Trump's Sunday tweet, which reportedly reflects a deeper unease within the White House about public health experts' approach to the pandemic, is the first sign that he may be doubting the guidance he gave Americans just a week ago to flatten the curve. For months, Trump downplayed the dangers of the coronavirus outbreak in public and private. He told supporters that it was a hoax that Democrats and news organizations had exaggerated to undermine him. Not until last Monday, when the number of confirmed cases in the United States hit 4,000 and the stock market suffered record-breaking losses, did he decide to reckon seriously with this pandemic. That the mercurial president is already threatening to reverse course as the number of domestic cases tops 40,000 speaks to a more fundamental problem for Americans in this crisis. Trump doesn't care. I don't mean to suggest that the president wants scores of Americans to die from the coronavirus, but it's clear that he doesn't care about the people whom social distancing practices and lockdown measures are trying to save. These people are hypothetical, abstract, and intangible. He has also disputed damning death tolls before. The president is more concerned about the cornerstones of his re-election message, a low unemployment rate that is likely to skyrocket this week, and a plummeting stock market, which hurts his family business and corporate pals. Trump's lack of empathy is worsened by his preference for style over substance. His daily press briefings promise miracle cures that don't work, sweeping action that falls far short, and imminent relief that never appears. When news organizations catch on to the snake oil salesmanship, he attacks. I watch and listen to the fake news, CNN, MSDNC, ABC, NBC, CBS, some of Fox, desperately and foolishly pleading to be politically correct, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. And all I see is hatred of me at any cost, he wrote on Twitter on Sunday evening. Don't they understand that they are destroying themselves? These flaws make Trump receptive to rising unease across the American right with public health guidelines. Over the weekend, a number of Fox News hosts favorably shared a Medium essay by a Silicon Valley technologist with no public health experience or medical training. His conclusions fit the conservative media's preconceived notions about the current crisis, that the experts had gotten it wrong, major news organizations had fallen victim to hysteria, state and local governments had gone too far, and most Americans should return to everyday life. Medium removed the post on Sunday, but not before it resonated with some of Trump's closest allies. There is also a growing sense in finance circles that the projected loss in economic growth is outweighing the projected loss in human life. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board led the charge last week, warning that, quote, no society can safeguard public health for long at the cost of its overall economic health, unquote. Lloyd Blankfein, the former Goldman Sachs CEO, also sounded alarms. Extreme measures to flatten the virus curve are sensible, for a time, to stretch out the strain on health infrastructure, he wrote on Twitter on Sunday night, but crushing the economy, jobs, and morale is also a health issue, and beyond. Within a very few weeks, let those with a lower risk of the disease return to work. I don't blame the president, or anyone else, for dreading the economic nightmare ahead. There is simply no precedent for what will come next. Some economists estimate that the economy could shrink by as much as 25% in the second quarter of 2020, a contraction without parallel in modern times. A Federal Reserve Bank president publicly suggested last week that the national unemployment rate could reach 30% by month's end. At the height of the Great Depression, by comparison, the unemployment rate peaked at just under 25%. The coronavirus's toll on American livelihoods will be immense by modern standards. Elected officials cannot prevent all of the damage. Fortunately, they can mitigate a great deal of it. States can halt foreclosures and evictions, impose moratoriums on rent and mortgage payments, and offer other forms of direct relief to their hardest-hit citizens. Congress could send direct cash payments to every American to help them make ends meet while the economy is frozen, offer lifelines to healthy businesses that face ruin through no fault of their own, enact a universal paid sick leave law to help hourly workers recover, and adopt countless other measures to blunt the impact. But Republican leaders who have spent their careers preaching the virtues of small government appear unwilling to pursue this path. Under the Senate GOP's original proposal for Phase 3 of coronavirus relief, lower-income Americans would have received far less money than those who make more than $75,000 a year. Democrats also revolted against the Republicans' proposed $500 billion assistance fund for companies, which Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin would control with little oversight and few constraints. Trump refused to rule out the possibility that his family business could receive some of the largesse. The politicians in Washington are telling Americans, as they always do, that they are riding to the rescue by writing checks to individuals and offering loans to businesses. The Journal's editorial board complained last week, but there is no amount of money that can make up for the losses of the magnitude we are facing if this extends for several more weeks. After the first $1 trillion this month, will we have to spend another $1 trillion in April and another in June? The response to this rhetorical question is easy. Sure, why not? Trump's heartlessness is also not unique among his peers. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson downplayed the coronavirus's dangers by taking a nihilistic approach to how many people would die. Getting coronavirus is not a death sentence except for maybe no more than 3.4% of our population, probably far less. He said in an interview last week, "We don't shut down our economy because tens of thousands of people die on the highways." In a country of more than 330 million people, a 3.4% fatality rate would be equivalent to the entire state of Ohio dropping dead. I would be curious to know how many quarters of negative gross domestic product growth the senator would trade for them. If Americans are lucky, federal public health experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci will be able to overcome these voices and the president's natural tendency towards self-interest. Even if the experts lose, it's worth noting that Trump can't actually undo the lockdown measures under which many Americans currently live. Those powers lie with state governors and local officials, many of whom have acted with more alacrity and caution than national leaders have shown so far. But Trump has tremendous power to disrupt the response. He could use his platform to encourage desperate businesses and restless citizens to defy restrictions, overwhelming the state's ability to enforce them. Republican-led governments in states like Texas and Florida, which have been slow to adopt far-reaching restrictions, would also likely embrace Trump's laissez-faire stance. Americans would then be facing a war on two fronts, against a deadly virus that threatens their lives and those they love, and a federal government that won't do everything it can to save them.
This virus is unforgiving. It spreads before you even know you've caught it. And it tricks you into believing that it's nothing more than a little influenza. For many of us, it may not be much more than the flu. And so it can be very confusing as to why schools are closed, restaurants are shuttered, and now the virus is taking what's left of our precious liberty. But the real problem is not the 80% who will get over this in a week. It's the 20% of patients, the older, those that are immunocompromised, those that have other medical problems, who are going to need a bit more support, some oxygen, or maybe a ventilator, life support. We do amazing things like this to save patients in our American hospitals and across the world every single day, but we can't take care of everyone at once. And we can't keep that low mortality promise if we can't provide the support that our patients need. Our healthcare system doesn't have any slack. There are no empty wards waiting for patients or nurses waiting in the wings. We barely even have enough masks for the nurses that we have. Looking back to the last time we were limited tools and having a dangerous infection spread quickly was the beginning of the 1918 pandemic. 2 cities in America made different choices about how to proceed, and when only a few patients were affected. St. Louis shut itself down and sheltered in place. But Philadelphia went ahead with a huge parade to celebrate those going off to war. A week later, Philadelphia hospitals were overrun and thousands were dead, many more than in St. Louis. This is a cautionary tale for our time. Things are already tough in Illinois hospitals, including mine. There's no vaccine or readily available antiviral to help stem the tide. All we have to slow the spread is distance, social distance. And if we let every single patient with this infection infect 3 more people, and then each of them infect 2 or 3 more people, there won't be a hospital bed when my mother can't breathe very well, or when yours is coughing too much. How can soccer or book club be so dangerous? Why ask so much of people for just a few hundred cases? Because it's the only way to save those lives. And now is the time. Because the numbers you see today in the news are the people that got sick a week ago. And there are still people today who got sick today who haven't even noticed that they've been sick yet. They picked up the virus, and it will take a week to see that show in our numbers. Waiting for hospitals to be overwhelmed will leave the following week's patients with nowhere to go. In short, without taking drastic measures, the healthy and optimistic among us will doom the vulnerable. We have to fight this fire before it grows too high. These extreme restrictions may seem, in the end, a little anticlimactic, because it's really hard to feel like you're saving the world when you're watching Netflix from your couch. But if we do this right, nothing happens. Yeah. A successful shelter in place means that you're going to feel like it was all for nothing. And you'd be right. Because nothing means that nothing happened to your family. And that's what we're going for here. Even starting now, we can't stop the cases from coming fast and furious, at least for the next couple of weeks and in the short term. But with a real commitment to sheltering in place and a whole lot of patience, we can help protect our critical workers who need to use public transportation in order to safely get from where they need to go. We can give our factories time to ramp up production of all that PPE so that we have enough masks to last. And we can make more medications and learn more about how we can use them to help save more lives. Even a little time makes a huge difference. It will take more than a week to start seeing the rate of increase slow down, and that's a complicated thing to say. It'll take even longer to see the rate come down and see it slowing and infections going down. So please don't give up. Public health and hospitals have been working hard for a long time, and now it's your turn to do your part. A huge sacrifice to make, but a sacrifice that can make thousands of differences. Maybe even a difference in your family too.